Today I decided to give you guys a ranking of the RoboCop franchise. This is a series of films that started in the late 1980s and has basically been ongoing even up to this day. There's apparently a fifth film in the works called RoboCop Returns, and hopefully it'll be pretty good. And apparently it's going to follow the continuity of the original film and ignore the sequels and remake. So I figured what better time than to give you guys a ranking of the original franchise. So without further ado, let's get started. Coming in at number 4 is 2014's RoboCop remake. This film has some things going for it that I do like. For instance, I do like Samuel Jackson in the movie. He basically plays a reporter type guy, basically more or less like an exploitative news show host. Something along the lines of TMZ mixed with, I don't know, CNN or Fox or something. He's actually really entertaining in the movie, and he's pretty much the only high point. Everything else about this film is just a cheap carbon copy of the original, but not done nearly to the same degree. I mean, what kind of asshole makes a PG-13 RoboCop movie? Anyway, all in all, this is not a terrible film. It does have some decent acting in it. The action's kind of fancy and flashy, but no one here is really that good in the role. This time around, Joel Kinnaman plays Murphy, and he's just not that good. I don't hate him as an actor. I thought he was okay as Rick Flag in the Suicide Squad films, but ultimately a very forgettable and watered-down remake of a classic. It doesn't need to exist. Michael Keaton's in it, and it's good to see him getting work still, but apart from that, there's just not much going for this film. Watch at your own risk, or if you're just really curious. Coming in at number 3 is 1993's RoboCop 3. It's hard to believe this film is 30 years old this year. Part 3 essentially sees RoboCop taking on OCP, who has more or less become a privatized military this time around. This time is led by the actor Rip Torn. RoboCop must go against this corrupt, privatized army in order to save old Detroit and its citizens. This time around, Robert John Burke plays RoboCop, replacing Peter Weller, who played him in the first 2 films. And he does an okay job. I would say he does better than Joel Kinnaman, who basically doesn't even act like RoboCop, just acts like Joel Kinnaman. And he does a decent job. This is not a god-awful film. It does have some quirkiness to it, and I actually do like the fact that they brought the RoboCop theme back for this one, which was sadly missing from RoboCop 2. But apart from that, it's just kind of a watered-down version of RoboCop 1 and 2, much like the remake. But this one still does feel like it's part of the same series. It's also the last time we see Nancy Allen in the role of Lewis, and she, spoiler alert, gets killed early on in the film, so that's kind of a bummer as well. All in all, not a bad film. But the biggest problem with it is that it's PG-13. What kind of asshole would make a PG-13 RoboCop movie? All in all, not a bad film, but not really one that I recommend to anyone who's not already a fan of RoboCop. But if you do love RoboCop 1 and 2, I do think you might get something out of 3. Coming in at number 2 is 1990's RoboCop 2. I really love RoboCop 2. It's actually directed by Irvin Kershner, who also directed The Empire Strikes Back. This is a crazy and over-the-top sequel that shows this new gang led by this cult leader named Kane as he tries to rule the city, and also OCP tries to utilize this criminal by turning him into a cyborg called RoboCop 2, kind of a meta name for the villain. OCP at one point tries to reprogram RoboCop so he's more docile. It actually leads to a really funny segment in the movie where RoboCop is basically talking to dead corpses, telling them to not stop resisting arrest, and shooting at people for smoking. It's actually pretty funny. The humor in this one is amped up, and it's not as good as the first film, but I do think this is a crazy and entertaining film. One of the writers on the film was actually Frank Miller, the comic book creator. And he actually had a much crazier and over-the-top script for this movie planned. but due to budgetary reasons, they couldn't film the script that he wanted. However, many years later, they actually did release his original script in a comic book, an infamous comic book called RoboCop by Frank Miller, which is actually a pretty intense and over-the-top comic that I do recommend, especially if you like just really bolsterous, crazy action. This comic book goes all out and is basically the RoboCop 2 we never got to see. All in all, an entertaining sequel and one that I think is actually underrated. Highly recommended to anyone who's a fan of the first film, anyone who loves good action. Which leads me to number 1, 1987's classic film, RoboCop. This film is incredible. Directed by Paul Verhoeven and starring Peter Weller in the title role as Alex Murphy, aka RoboCop, a Detroit police officer who has been gunned down by this gang led by this very cynical villain named Clarence Boddicker. You find out that Clarence Boddicker is actually working for CP, which is the company that owns the cops and created RoboCop. And the person he's working for in the company's name is Dick Jones. Clarence Boddicker is played by Kurtwood Smith, who a lot of people might know from that 70s show, and he's an amazing villain, and possibly my favorite part of the movie. You actually really feel bad for Alex Murphy in the movie. He essentially loses his body, his family, and his sense of identity after he was gunned down by Boddicker and his gang. But he's rebuilt by OCP in a program led by Bob Norton to become the badass hero and law enforcer RoboCop. Just a truly amazing and awesome film that has lots of really good action in it, amazing script, great humor. There's even sections of the news in this movie where they basically satirize culture and politics of the 1980s. It's a timeless film. It does feel very much like an 80s film, but the themes and overall story is very relevant even to this day. I absolutely love this film, and I don't think it'll ever be topped. But hopefully we do get that RoboCop returned at some point and continues the story for this original classic. Highly recommend it to anyone who loves good cinema, good action, or just good entertainment overall. You cannot beat the original RoboCop. There actually has been other media of RoboCop, including several video games, such as the original NES/Game Boy game RoboCop, of course, as well as an Xbox game, which I do think was actually relatively fun, but sadly my Xbox is on the fritz, and sadly this game is not backwards compatible, so I pretty much can't even play this one. But still a fun little game if you can get your hands on a working Xbox. RoboCop was also a playable fighter in Mortal Kombat 11, and actually voiced by Peter Weller in that game, so that's actually pretty neat as well. There's even a new video game coming out called RoboCop Rogue City, and hopefully it's really good. It's going to be released on modern systems, and I'm definitely looking forward to that. Hopefully we do get a 5th movie at some point, and they don't cancel RoboCop Returns. But even if it doesn't work out, we still have 2 really awesome films, a decent film, and a crappy, forgettable remake. Thank you all for watching. If you'd like, leave your list down below, and peace out.